I found out that this monitor is sold out in most places. There is a reason for that. For the last couple of months, I've been using this MSI gaming monitor as a creator. And to say that I'm impressed is an understatement. It's opened my eyes to a whole other level of what monitors can do. Regardless, if you're thinking about picking one of these up, there are some things that I've noticed that are really annoying and you need to know before buying, whether you're on Mac or Windows.
It's so annoying. I don't want to pay hundreds of dollars to just change my Windows wallpaper just because my Windows isn't licensed.
Well, why don't you try Hookeys? That's a ton cheaper, and if you use the code TN20, you get it even cheaper.
What do you mean? How do I get it and how is it possible?
Well, see this video here, or the one you're watching. Click in the link on the video description, add the Windows 11 CD product to the cart, proceed to checkout, add the code TN20 for the extra discount.
So what, the Windows 11 Pro OEM key is just $23.22?
Yeah. Choose the preferred payment option and complete the purchase. The key will be available on the purchased orders in a few moments. Copy the key and paste it into your Windows activation settings, and you're all done.
Well, that was easy.
Is that Ryan Gosling?
No.
Anyway, by the way, the same discount code also works website-wide, so go check out other products, maybe like Microsoft Office. So before we go into the different aspects of the monitor review, I realized that maybe I need to explain some of the terms. When you're looking at the monitor review, understand what nits, gamuts, spaces, brightness, and all of these things mean, in case you don't know that. If you know that, skip ahead of this bit. So one of the things that we see, it comes with a factory calibration sheet, which I've got over here. And in there's different things that it says about the monitor. In fact, some of the things are better than what we see on the specs. It just shows that, hey, we checked this monitor in the factory, and then here's some of the things. So if we start from the top, you can see there's this kind of a colored bit in there, and then this basically says that this is color GAMUT, CIE 1976 DCI-P3 coverage. So what on earth does this mean? You can see that there's a triangle within these colors. What this means is that all of these, the bit that's outside, all of this weird shape, almost like a triangle around, is the color space. So these are all the colors possible technically software-wise, but then the actual display GAMUT, what you see over here, that's why it says GAMUT on the top over there, is what this monitor is able to display out what we are actually viewing. So all these different levels of green, for example, in here, there's somewhere around that teal area, what you see on the monitor there. It shows that in this triangle area, this is what this monitor can display. And if we're looking at the actual GAMUT and display area, you can see that the DCI-P3, which is the blue in there, and then there is actually a red triangle around it there as well, but you can't really see. That means that this is the monitor's bit of that color space, if that makes sense. So imagine the bit around it with all the colors is a crayon box, and then the triangle is how many crayons you actually have inside the box. The bigger the triangle, the more it can display. Next, we're gonna look at bit depth. Now, there are different bit depths of monitors available and cameras. So this camera right now, I'm shooting 10-bit footage. We can also output 16-bit RAW. Blackmagic cameras that we are using, they are 12-bit RAW. So what does that mean? The bits mean how many different shades are between two different colors. This is a perfect example. Green, right? Everything here is kind of green, but this screen, there is a gradient here because there's lots of different shades of green in the wild or on a monitor. But if you're looking at different greens in here, then the bit depth shows how many different shades of that color is available. So for example, if we've got an 8-bit monitor panel, which is what we've been standardized in the last couple of, decades, then that can show us about 16 million different shades of colors. Whereas a 10-bit panel can show us over 1 billion colors. So the bit depth, there's a huge difference. 8-bit is 256 shades of each color, and 10-bit is over 1,000. So 2 over 8 or 210. That's 10-bit, 8-bit. That's 256, and that is 1028. So by knowing the gamut, we know that, okay, we can show all the colors in here, but we also know that we can have all these different shades within that space available. And having 10-bit panel, not 8-bit FRC. 8-bit FRC means that the panel can actually show 8 bits, but the pixels around it, so let's say that it is like this. Imagine your display is like that. These are the pixels in the display. Then the 8-bit plus FRC means that this pixel in the middle over there is going to show 8-bit different shades, okay? So it doesn't have over 1 billion colors available that it can show. It shows over 16 million. But if you're going to blend the pixels around it, so this pixel here, for example, starts showing slightly different color and this one slightly different color, then outside it might look to you that you're going to have 10-bit if you start to flicker these pixels, because this is like a flicker rate, then it kind of gives a vision that you still get 10-bit display. But that is not actually real 10-bit display like this one over here. So in terms of bit depth, remember, the bigger the number, the better it is. Moving on to the next bit, which is color accuracy, and that is often measured in delta E. And this, what we can see, we've got color accuracy space all the way on the bottom there. And here you can see all the different colors, and then the delta E measures the deviance, or kind of how far away from what we're trying to display from the software and what we actually see. So let's say you color the footage, you shoot it, and you think, oh, this looks good. So what the program is showing you and what actually comes on the screen, how accurate this is in real life. If it's not accurate, what means is you think, oh yeah, this looks nice and blue over there, but you put it on a different monitor that is actually color accurate, and you realize this is a lot purple than I thought. That's because the color accuracy is off. For creators, color accuracy is really, really important. That what we're seeing on the display is actually what they're trying to display as well. The delta E means that the smaller the number is, the better it is. Because if you look inside this triangle, let's say we take a random point in there, let's say in there, but the actual color is somewhere over there, then the delta E is measured at the distance between basically the two, what it's trying to display and what it actually is, and you'll see the difference. So as you can see, in this bottom section of this chart, of this calibration test report, we can see that everything is very, 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 very low. There is red 3 and red 1 that seem to be a bit off. And we can see that slightly in there as well, that around the reds, they're slightly off, but we're talking about a couple of percent here. This red is over 4 and that one is under 2. So anything that is under 2, delta E less than 2, you won't be able to see a difference with your eyes. If it's between 3 and 4, you might be able to see, if you got them side by side, you look very closely, you might be able to see a difference. So to have a delta E less than 1, that is extremely color accurate and as good as it basically can get. Delta E average 0.52 is an incredible result, what we can see there. So remember, color accuracy and delta E, the smaller the number, the better. Then we're talking about brightness. The brightness of the monitor actually also affects some of the other specs of this, because if the monitor can go very bright, it might be able to show some of these colors in a color space. So for example, in this here, if we go further to the green and further to the red or further to the blue, these colors start to become more and more neon color, very bright and saturated colored. So imagine a high-vis vest of someone wearing in bright sunshine. It's very, very bright colors. So to have big brightness of the display and the color space to actually show that space will give us very, very good colors. So the brightness is actually measured in nits. The higher it is, the better it is. And this display goes 1000 nits, and 1000 nits is very, very bright when it comes to that. But brightness, the higher the number it is, the better it is. And finally, refresh rate. What that means is how many times each second there is a new picture shown on the display. how many times is it able to refresh that? So if you see a refresh rate of 360, 140, it means that it shows it that many times every single second. Hertz is basically just per second. The higher the refresh rate is, the smoother it is. You especially be able to see this when you're moving the mouse around on the screen. So instead of seeing the mouse very jittery across the screen, which you would see on a 60 Hz display, on a higher refresh rate, it's very, very smooth. For gamers, obviously it's important because that means that you're able to see more frames of your game, so the game will look smoother if your graphics card is able to display them. But for creators, it just gives us an overall fluid motion of our color software that we're using and the overall system, how it feels, the smoothness of it. Do we need to see more than 120 Hertz? Not really, because how often do you shoot more than 120 frames per second and you need to see it in 120 frames per second? Because you're going to be delivering the footage anyway, 60 maximum maybe frames per second. So to have anything above 120 Hertz is really a waste for us, apart from just having it really, really smooth. There's also gamma curve and grayscale, but I think these are a little bit more advanced specs that most people don't need to know about. But to make it more digestible, these are some of the specs of the monitor that you usually see displayed everywhere. And now I'll go one by one, which is the most important for me, and how this affects our creative workflow and if it is any good. Most important thing as a creator is the color accuracy and space. It might as well have million nits of brightness and 1000 Hertz of 8K resolution, but if the colors are off, it's unusable to me. And I've got some really good news in this front. It's a true 10-bit panel regarding color space coverage, 99.3% DCI-P3, 97.8% ARGB, and delta E is less than 1. That is very color accurate. And I'm happy with this. I'd say if you're a pro colorist, you're probably not gonna get this monitor anyway. But as a creator, freelancer, I think this is in the perfect category. Secondly, what's important to me is resolution and frame rate. This is the 34-inch ultra-wide 21.9 aspect ratio with 14:4p resolution vertically. Horizontally, obviously a bit more. But I would actually pay extra to get a bit higher resolution, as to me the 1440p at this size for creating is just the borderline acceptable. Because the distance the monitor is from me, I can actually see the pixels around the text. But to have a 4K ultra-wide would be a really nice upgrade worth paying for. MSI, are we able to do it? Do you have one? Regarding frame rate, this is an absolute overkill here. 360 Hertz. Wow. I mean, I've always said that we don't need more than 60 Hertz as a creator, but now once I've had it for a while, this PC feels so smooth. And when we're going down to 120 Hertz on a MacBook Pro screen, for example, it kind of feels like ancient technology. Oh, did I mention that this is OLED? Now, if you enjoy beautiful picture on the screen, this is something else. But this is not just any OLED. This is tandem OLED, QD tandem OLED to be precise. In simple terms, you get very deep blacks and super bright screen, 1030 nits peak brightness. But OLED versus QD-OLED. What exactly is the difference between the QD-OLED and the standard OLED? You'll hear these terms thrown around a lot, but they aren't exactly the same thing. And the difference comes down to how they handle light. Standard OLED, technically called WOLED, has been the king for years. It uses white light source and then pushes that light through color filters to give you red, green, and blue. It's great, it's reliable, and it gives you those perfectly inky blacks. But filters are essentially subtractors. They block light to create color. This is why standard OLEDs can sometimes look a little bit dim and washed out when you really push the brightness. QD-OLED changes the math here. Instead of filtering white light, it uses pure blue OLED foundation, and that blue light then hits a layer of quantum dots. These aren't filters, they're converters. They absorb that blue energy and instantly transformed it into incredibly pure red and green. Because we're converting light rather than blocking it, the efficiency is off the charts. In the real world, that translates into two huge wins. First, color volume. Colors don't just look bright, they look saturated even at high brightness. When you're looking at an explosion in HDR, for example, the oranges and reds don't turn whitish, they stay deep and punchy. Second, the 2026 factor, which is that historically QD-OLED had two weaknesses: fuzzy text and purple looking blacks in bright rooms. But with this 5th gen panel, they've moved to a new V-shaped pixel layout that finally makes text as sharp as a standard office monitor that uses the old LCD technology. You're probably using one of those right now. And the new dark armor coating, even if you've got a window open, those blacks actually stay black instead of turning into hazy purple. So in short, standard OLED is fantastic for dark rooms, but QD-OLED is the final boss and makes the OLED kind of old technology. So with the QD-OLED, we have perfect contrast and adding the brightness and color pop of a quantum dot monitor or TV, depending how you're using the panel. And tandem OLED means that this panel, instead of having one layer of the OLED, you've just got two, so you can get more brightness. By having two layers, that means that each layer has to do less work because that helps you with the OLED burn-in. It also has an RGB stripe for better text clarity. This is a huge thing, as previously text on OLED used to look not so nice. Regardless of the RGB stripe tech, I think we're missing a bit of resolution here, which is what I mentioned in the previous section. I'm not 100% happy about the text clarity, and perhaps that's my biggest gripe with this monitor. I need more resolution. Connectivity, it's got everything you need. Whether you want to connect this to a PC, laptop, console, anything you want, and USB-C power delivery as well. Here are the connectors: two HDMI 2.1, one DisplayPort 2.1, one USB-C video input, and 98-watt power delivery. As you can see on the MacBook, I can charge and get picture out from the same port. So you don't need to connect your laptop to a charger if it supports USB-C power delivery. Two USB-A ports, 5 gigabits, one USB-B port for uplink to your PC or Mac, one Kensington lock, and one 3.5mm jack out. The reason you've got USB Type-A ports on this monitor is obviously if you want to transfer anything directly from the monitor to your computer, but also in order to have KVM. So if you want to switch between different devices, let's say you've got your Mac laptop and another PC connected to it, so you just switch the source, but then your keyboard and mouse, they also switch. So you don't have to switch your keyboard and mouse receivers and put them to another. You can just leave the receivers into the monitor and it swaps them, in case you didn't know what KVM means. Now, in terms of the monitor characteristics, it's really nice because they have reduced the actual monitor stand on the bottom. It takes a lot less space. It is so thin and it still does the same thing. We've got up and down, we've got this way, left and right, and we've even got tilt this way. From this angle, you've already noticed that this is a curved monitor, and this one has a 1800R curve. So what does that mean? Let's explain that now. So the number and the R mean radius of a circle. So imagine a half a circle, right? And let's say that this is 1800R. If you've got a smaller circle, so it bends a lot more, which means that this would be maybe 1000R. So the bigger the radius, the flatter the curve is, because let's say you've got a very, very big radius circle there, and then we make this, I don't know, 4000R or something like that, then it looks less and less flatter. So, you know the Earth, right? Even though it's a big globe, it kind of looks flat when you look outside the window. Shout out to flat earthers, but it's actually still round. So the R curve measures the radius. Remember that? The smaller the number, the bigger the bend. The bigger the number, the less it bends, if that makes sense. So having an ultra-wide monitor instead of two monitors is actually fantastic. Hitting the Windows key and then left or right arrow, I can easily pin the monitors just one side or the other side without having a stupid little thing in the middle that you would usually have with two monitors. Some of the other bonus features about this is that it's got an AI sensor over here that detects whether you're at the monitor, and if you leave it kind of dims it. You can turn it off in the settings if you want to. It's got OLED care. It moves your picture around slightly on the screen to make sure that the same pixels kind of don't project the same light so that it prevents burn-in. I have noticed it multiple times now. It's not actually annoying, but you do kind of notice, oh, the picture moved just ever so slightly. It also has OLED care mode or modes where the monitor will turn off once in 24 hours to protect the OLED and do some kind of OLED care magic, which is nice to protect the panel, but I've had this monitor on 24/7 in the last couple of months to see if anything happens really. And that feature is single-handedly the most annoying, as it always happens during the work hours, and then I'm unable to use the PC for a couple of minutes and I have to do something else because the screen is black. The dark armor film, it makes the deep blacks even darker, and I mentioned this earlier, apparently 40% darker. It's got lots of different color spaces that you can toggle by going in the back here. Also, this monitor has a remote display app, which means that you can control all the monitor settings on your smartphone, which is pretty cool. The conclusion, I'd say it's 95% perfect, and that 5% comes down to resolution. I'd trade the 360 Hz to 240 Hz any day to upgrade the resolution. I've done zero gaming on this, and probably some people are mad in the comment section below, but if you do any gaming, then this monitor is even more attractive to you. I'd say this is one of the best monitors you could buy and get in 2026, especially as a creator. And if you're a gamer, then even more, because it bridges those two worlds absolutely amazingly. Now, I do want to say that it takes some time to getting used to which color space you're going to want to see on the display. And you need to play around a little bit depending on your workflow, as if you come from an LCD, all your footage looks super contrasty and slightly different and you think, whoa, my color grade is off. So make sure you demo your footage on other displays as well before delivering something like that to the client, as there is a little adjustment needed to what you're seeing on the screen because of the super high contrast ratio and OLED, QD-OLED panel tech Gen 5. And all in all, I understand why this is sold out everywhere, because it is amazing. It really is one of the best monitors you can get. So if you want to check it out, I'm going to leave the link in the description below. Congratulations! If you've reached this part of the video, you're in the top 13% of people's attention graph. And there's more than 50% chance that you seeing this means you're not subscribed. So consider subscribing, hitting that bell icon, liking the video. It would mean a world to us. If you'd like to get detailed access to our internal benchmark database of CPUs, GPUs, SSDs, and so on for creators, then may I invite you to sign up to our newsletter, where we send out relevant information a couple of times a month when there is information. I'm not interested in flooding your inbox. This is when there is good information to share for your creative workflow, then we'll send those emails out. And also you'll get the most exclusive access to some of the behind the scenes, perhaps even giveaways. So scan that QR code or link in the description below. If you've got any urgent questions to me personally, you can always reach out on Minect. I'll always get back to my messages. If you're looking for a new hoodie, may I recommend this one. This is not just any cheap random hoodie. This is a high quality hoodie that you can get. And when purchasing this, we get a small little kickback to help us build what we're building here. My passion is to help creators choose the best tech for their workflow and help them save some money in the process. This is Tech Notice, and if you've reached this part of the video, you have been upgraded to the top 5% of the people who ever see this part. And now YouTube thinks that you'll like this video, and if you haven't subscribed, you can do it on this side. Thanks very much, guys, for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.